We live in an age that tells us that love is limitless, that kindness has no end, that sacrifice must bleed until there is nothing left. But that is a lie. A deception crafted to wear us down until we are shells exhausted, bitter, and far from the life we were meant to live. When we speak about boundaries, immediately the mind of many goes to walls, to barriers, to division. There is a fear woven deep into our culture that if we dare to set limits, if we dare to say this is where I stand and I will not be moved, we are somehow turning our backs on love. We are somehow being selfish, being cold, being unchristlike. But that is a profound misunderstanding of what true love demands of us. Boundaries are not the enemy of love. In fact, boundaries are one of the purest expressions of it. To love rightly is to love with wisdom, not just with feeling. It is to see clearly what is good for another person and what is good for your own soul. Love without boundaries is not love at all. It is chaos, it is codependency, it is enabling. It leaves both the giver and the receiver broken and confused. Real love knows its own limits. Real love understands that to truly care for someone else, you must first be in a position of strength, not weakness. You must have something solid to give, and you cannot pour from a cup that has been shattered by your refusal to guard it. There is a kind of sentimentality today that says the more you sacrifice yourself, the more you abandon your own needs, the more righteous you are. But what you end up with is not holiness, it is bitterness. It is resentment. It is the quiet, festering anger of a person who has spent their whole life saying yes, when they should have said no, who has stretched themselves so thin that there is almost nothing left. And when that happens, when your heart grows cold and weary because you refuse to protect it, the very people you are trying to love suffer for it. Your family suffers, your friends suffer, your calling suffers. You cannot give what you do not have. When you establish a boundary, when you say, I can go this far and no farther, you are not rejecting love, you are securing it. You are saying, I want to love you well, and to do that, I must guard the wellspring of my life. If you let anyone and everyone dip their hands into the well without discretion, it will not take long before the well runs dry. But if you protect it, if you are careful with it, if you recognize that it is precious, then it will continue to flow pure, strong, and full of life. Look at the way God deals with his people. He is a God of infinite love, and yet he is also a God of boundaries. He says to the sea, This far you shall come, and no farther, and here shall your proud waves stop. He gave Adam and Eve the whole garden to enjoy, but placed a boundary around one tree. Even his covenant with us is marked by limits, blessings for obedience, consequences for rebellion. Love that is real does not erase all limits. It creates the right ones. It establishes order. It defines relationship. It protects the sacred. There are times when setting a boundary feels like an act of violence. It feels like you are hurting someone, disappointing someone, betraying someone. And every part of your heart wants to cave, to soften, to erase the line you have drawn. But that moment, that ache you feel, is not proof that you are doing something wrong. It is often proof that you are doing something necessary. Love is not always soft. Love does not always say yes. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to look someone in the eye with all the compassion in your soul and say, No, I will not allow this. I will not permit you to trample this gift that God has given me. I love you, but I love him more, and I will honor what he has entrusted to me. There will be those who do not understand. There will be those who call you selfish, hard-hearted, even cruel. But you must remember that your worth is not determined by how many people you please. Your calling is not to be everyone's savior, everyone's healer, everyone's endless source of comfort. Your calling is to walk faithfully, to steward your heart well, to love as Christ loved with both tenderness and truth. And sometimes the truth demands a boundary. When you set a boundary, you teach others how to love you well. You model what it means to honor and respect a human soul. You show them that love is not about domination or exploitation or endless giving without thought. Love is about mutual sacrifice, yes, but it is also about mutual honor. If you never teach someone where your limits are, you are not inviting them into deeper relationship, you are inviting them into dysfunction. You are allowing them to believe that you are something less than a person, something they can use without thought or consequence. Boundaries also reveal something critical about your trust in God. When you set a boundary, you are saying, I believe that it is not my job to save everyone. I believe that God is big enough to deal with the fallout of my no. I believe that I am not the ultimate answer to every need that cries out for attention. It is a profound act of faith. It is a surrender of control. It is laying down the false savior complex that so many of us carry without even realizing it. You are not called to die 1,000 little deaths at the hands of everyone who demands more from you than you can rightly give. Christ has already died the one death that matters. Your role is to live wisely, courageously, joyfully within the limits He has set for you. If you are afraid to set a boundary, ask yourself what you are really afraid of. Are you afraid of losing someone's approval? Are you afraid of appearing unkind? Are you afraid of being misunderstood? Those fears are real, but they are not worthy masters. If you live your life according to the fears of others' reactions, you will never live at all. You will be a slave to every whim, every expectation, every unreasonable demand. And in the end, you will have nothing left to give to the people who truly need you, the ones God has assigned to your care. The people who truly love you will honor your boundaries. They may not understand them at first. They may wrestle with them, but over time they will see the fruit. They will see that you are healthier, stronger, more whole. They will see that you are able to give more richly because you have guarded your soul well. And even if they do not see it, even if they never understand, you will know that you are standing in the truth. You will know that you are loving them in the way that is best, not just in the way that feels easiest in the moment. Setting boundaries is not about building walls to keep others out. It is about building doors, gates that you open and close with wisdom and love. It is about choosing carefully who and what you allow into the sacred spaces of your heart. It is about recognizing that not every need that cries out is your responsibility. It is about understanding that love, real love, has shape and form and strength. It is not a shapeless mass that anyone can mold according to their desires. It is a living thing, and like all living things, it must be protected if it is to thrive. Boundaries are not the end of love. They are the beginning of love, rightly ordered. They are not a sign of selfishness, but of stewardship. They are not cruelty, but clarity. And when you set them well, when you set them in the fear of God and not in the fear of man, you create a life that can pour out real love, not the kind that destroys you, but the kind that glorifies Him. Would you also like me to write the next keynote in the same style if you're building a series? There is a quiet lie that creeps into the heart and whispers that freedom is the absence of limits. That true love means never saying no, never pushing back, never creating any distance. That if you really cared, you would always be available, always be open, always be giving. But look carefully at the world around you, and you will see the bitter fruit of such thinking. You will see families torn apart by resentments that no one dared to name. You will see friendships rot under the weight of unspoken expectations. You will see communities collapse into bitterness, suspicion, and betrayal. Wherever there is no boundary, there is chaos. Wherever there is no line, there is confusion. It is inevitable. It is inescapable. When you refuse to set a boundary, you think you are choosing peace, but you are actually laying the foundation for war. You think you are preserving the relationship, but you are planting seeds of its destruction. You imagine that by keeping silent, by going along, by allowing whatever comes, you are loving well. But all you are doing is trading short-term comfort for long-term devastation. Because when boundaries are absent, no one knows where they stand, expectations are blurred, responsibilities are confused, needs are unmet, wounds fester, and eventually everything that was once good, once hopeful, once promising, falls into disorder. People cannot thrive in a place where the rules are unclear. Relationships cannot survive when the lines of respect, honor, and responsibility are invisible. And yet how many of us have lived under the tyranny of ambiguity? How many of us have said yes with our mouths when every fiber of our being was screaming no? How many of us have agreed to one more request, one more obligation, one more sacrifice, not out of love, but out of fear, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood? And what has it produced? Has it produced joy? Has it produced intimacy? Has it produced unity? Or has it produced resentment, exhaustion, and a slow, grinding death of the soul? Chaos is not always loud. Sometimes it is very quiet. Sometimes it looks like a smile stretched too tight, like a heart that has gone numb, like a life that no longer knows what it is for. When you abandon your boundaries, you lose your sense of purpose. You lose the clarity that gives your life meaning and direction. You say yes to things you were never called to. You allow voices into your life that were never meant to have a place. You tolerate behaviors that slowly erode your dignity and your calling. And because you have said yes to everything, you end up serving nothing, not God, not others, and certainly not the stewardship of your own soul. The world tells you that limits are weakness, that to set a boundary is to be harsh, unkind, unloving. But the absence of limits is not strength. It is surrender. It is surrender to the loudest voice, to the pushiest demand, to the neediest presence. It is giving up your stewardship of your own life and allowing everyone else to dictate who you are and what you will do. And over time you become a stranger to yourself. You forget what you love, what you believe, what you were made for. You forget that you were created with purpose, not simply to be a receptacle for the needs and expectations of others. When boundaries are missing, people get hurt, and not just you. The people you love get hurt as well, because when you are stretched beyond your God, given limits, when you are worn thin by the constant demands you were never meant to meet, your love becomes polluted. It becomes tinged with frustration, with resentment, with anger. You start to give not out of joy, but out of duty. You start to serve not out of delight, but out of obligation. And people feel that. They may not be able to name it, but they sense it. They know the difference between a gift freely given and a service resentfully offered. They know when your yes comes from a place of abundance and when it comes from a place of guilt and fear. Confusion takes root wherever boundaries are absent. It takes root in the heart of the one who gives too much, and it takes root in the heart of the one who takes too much. Without clear boundaries, people do not know what is expected of them. They do not know what is acceptable, what is right, what is honoring. They do not know where their responsibilities begin and end, and so they push and pull and demand and assume, often without even realizing it. They test the limits because no one has ever shown them where the limits are, and the result is not peace but conflict, not unity but division, not trust but suspicion. When you refuse to set boundaries, you are not being kind. You are being unclear. You are allowing confusion to reign where there should be order. And the longer you let that confusion fester, the deeper the wounds will grow. Small offenses turn into major betrayals. Minor misunderstandings turn into broken relationships. What could have been healed with a single honest conversation, a single firm no, becomes a tangled mess that feels impossible to unravel. And all because you believed the lie that love means never setting limits. Even God, in His perfect love, sets boundaries. He defines right and wrong. He separates light from darkness. He makes distinctions between what is holy and what is profane, between what leads to life and what leads to death. He tells us what is acceptable and what is not. He does not leave us in confusion. He does not blur the lines to spare our feelings. He speaks clearly, firmly, lovingly, because He knows that without that clarity, without those boundaries, we would be lost. We would wander into destruction. We would choose chaos over life, confusion over truth. If God, in His infinite mercy and love, sees fit to set boundaries, how much more must we recognize that true love requires clarity, true relationship requires honesty, true service requires limits. There is no other way. Chaos and confusion are the inevitable fruits of a life without boundaries. And the longer you delay setting them, the harder the work of restoration will be when everything finally falls apart. There is a moment when you have to choose. Will you keep pretending that everything is fine, that you can keep giving and bending without consequence? Or will you have the courage to stop, to draw a line, to say, "This is who I am, this is what I am called to, this is what I can give, and this is what I cannot"? It will feel risky, it will feel terrifying, but it is the only path that leads to peace. It is the only path that leads to relationships that are strong and healthy and built on truth, not fear. Chaos and confusion do not come all at once. They creep in slowly, almost imperceptibly. One small compromise at a time, one swallowed word at a time, one ignored boundary at a time, until one day you wake up and realize you do not recognize your own life, your own heart, your own calling. You realize that in trying to please everyone, you have pleased no one, least of all the God who made you for more than this. And then you must decide whether you will keep drifting into deeper confusion, or whether you will have the courage to start setting the boundaries that should have been there all along. Would you like me to also prepare the next keynote afterward in the same tone and style? It would keep the flow if you're building a full series or talk. We live in a world that measures strength by how much you can carry, how much you can endure, how much you can achieve without ever flinching. We celebrate the ones who say yes to every opportunity, yes to every request, yes to every burden that is laid on their backs. And quietly, we begin to believe that the more we say yes, the stronger we are. The more we agree, the more we endure, the more righteous, the more noble, the more commendable we must be. But it is a lie. It is a deep, soul-twisting lie, because true strength is not found in an endless, tireless yes. True strength is found in the rare and holy courage to say no. Saying no is an act of conviction. It is an act of clarity. It is the ability to see beyond the moment, beyond the pressure of someone else's urgency, and recognize what is right, what is wise, what is necessary. It is easy to say yes. It requires very little from you in the moment. Just nod your head, mutter a few words of agreement, and bear the weight that someone else has placed upon your shoulders. But to say no with love, with firmness, with clarity, that demands something more. It demands that you know who you are. It demands that you understand what you are called to and what you are not. It demands that you risk disappointing someone else in order to remain faithful to the stewardship of your own life. Every yes you speak is a seed planted in the soil of your days, and seeds grow. They grow into commitments. They grow into responsibilities. They grow into obligations that will shape your time, your energy, your soul. And if you say yes to every seed thrown at your feet, you will soon find your life overgrown, choked by weeds of busyness and burdens that you were never meant to bear. You will find that you have no space left for the things that truly matter. No space for rest. No space for deep relationships. No space for prayer, for worship, for joy. You will be a prisoner of your own inability to say no. Strength is not the ability to carry every load. Strength is the wisdom to know which loads are yours to carry and which are not. There are burdens that God Himself has assigned to you, and there are burdens that others will try to place on you out of their own fear, their own insecurity, their own lack of boundaries. You must be able to discern the difference. You must be able to look at a burden, no matter how urgent it seems, and ask, "Is this mine? Has God called me to this?" And if the answer is no, you must be strong enough to refuse it. Not cruelly, not harshly, but clearly, firmly, faithfully. The world will not understand your no. Many people will not understand it. They will call you selfish. They will call you proud. They will say you are hard-hearted, that you are unwilling to serve, that you have forgotten the call to love. And their words will sting. Their disappointment will weigh heavily on your heart. Everything in you will want to rush back, to smooth it over, to erase the boundary you have drawn. But you must stand firm. Because your life does not belong to the shifting winds of human opinion. It belongs to God, and He has not called you to be all things to all people at all times. He has called you to be faithful to the particular path He has set before you. Saying no is not a rejection of love. It is an expression of it. It is an acknowledgement that you are finite, that you have limits, and that within those limits you can love well, you can serve deeply, you can give generously. But beyond those limits, you will only bring harm to yourself, to others, to the very work you are trying to honor. A yes that comes from exhaustion, from resentment, from fear, is not a holy yes. It is a corrupted offering, a gift tainted by the rot of self-forgetting. God is not glorified by a sacrifice that He did not ask you to make. Strength is found in the man or woman who can stand in the face of pressure, in the face of need, in the face of demand, and say, I cannot, I will not because I do not care, but because I care too much to give you less than my best. And right now, my best is reserved for the things that God has placed directly in my hands. It takes courage to say that. It takes faith. It takes a heart that is more concerned with pleasing God than with pleasing man. And that kind of heart is rare. It is precious. It is a pearl hidden in a field of constant, clamoring demands. When you learn to say no, you create space for the yes that truly matters. You create space to say yes to rest, to Sabbath, to the quietness where God speaks. You create space to say yes to deep, meaningful relationships that cannot be built in the cracks and corners of a frantic life. You create space to say yes to the work that is yours to do, the work that bears lasting fruit, the work that will matter 1,000 years from now when the lesser things have long since crumbled into dust. You cannot say yes to everything and expect your yes to still mean something. You cannot give your heart to every good cause, every hurting person, every opportunity that knocks on your door, and expect that your heart will survive the giving. It won't. It wasn't made for that. It was made to be given wisely, carefully, prayerfully. Think of Jesus. There were crowds who followed Him, crowds who pleaded for His time, His healing, His words. And yet He often withdrew. He often said no, not because He did not love them, but because He knew His mission. He knew His limits as a man. He knew when it was time to say yes to the crowd, and when it was time to say yes to the Father by stepping away, by resting, by praying. If the Son of God Himself did not give a yes to every demand, who are we to think that we must? There is a kind of false humility that says, I must be everything to everyone. I must say yes to everything that is asked of me. I must not disappoint anyone. But that is not humility. That is pride wearing a mask. It is pride that says I can do it all. I must do it all. The world depends on me. True humility bows its head and says, I am dust. I am limited. I am called to obey, not to be omnipresent. I am called to faithfulness, not to exhaustion. Strength is not in how much you can endure before you collapse. Strength is in how faithfully you can guard what God has entrusted to you, your heart, your calling, your relationships, your rest, your life. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to say a quiet, firm no. Not in anger, not in selfishness, but in love, in wisdom, in the fear of God. And when you do, when you learn to say no with a heart rooted in truth and love, you will find a freedom that no amount of frantic yeses could ever bring. Would you like me to continue with the next keynote too? Keeping the exact same style and emotional tone for consistency. There is a deep, steady truth woven into the fabric of all creation, a truth so foundational that if you ignore it, everything around you begins to unravel. That truth is order. Not chaos, not confusion, not endless compromise. Order. From the very beginning, God established boundaries. He spoke, and the waters were separated from the land. He drew the sky above and set the stars in their place. He told the sea how far it could come. He marked off day from night, light from darkness, land from ocean, life from non-life. Every act of creation was an act of setting boundaries, distinctions, line. God did not create a formless, shapeless existence where everything blurred into everything else. He created a world marked by structure, by clarity, by limits. And when we set healthy, godly boundaries in our lives, we are reflecting that same divine order. Boundaries are not man's idea, they are God's idea. They are not a result of sin or selfishness or fear. They are the way God designed His world to function. And when we align our lives with His order, we find peace. We find strength, we find beauty. But when we reject His pattern, when we erase the lines He has drawn, when we pretend that love means limitlessness and that freedom means the absence of structure, we invite disorder. We invite pain. We invite the very chaos that God separated us from in the first place. Look around at creation. Every living thing, every system, every relationship that thrives does so within boundaries. The human body itself is a masterpiece of ordered boundaries. Your skin holds your body together, defining what is you and what is not you. Your organs operate within certain limits. Your heart beats in rhythm. Your lungs expand and contract within a set pattern. The moment those boundaries are broken, when skin is torn, when rhythms fail, when cells rebel, you know that life is in danger. Disorder, disease, even death rush in when boundaries are violated. If this is true of the body, how much more true is it of the soul? When God created humanity, He placed Adam and Eve in a garden filled with abundance, beauty, and freedom. And even there, even in paradise, there were boundaries. You may eat of any tree in the garden. God said, "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat." One boundary, one clear, loving, necessary boundary, not because God was withholding good from them, but because He was protecting them, because boundaries are always about protection, about life, about thriving within the order that leads to true freedom. But when that boundary was crossed, everything changed, sin entered, disorder flooded in, pain, shame, separation, all because a boundary was treated as a suggestion rather than a safeguard. We must understand that boundaries are not barriers to love. They are the very framework in which love can truly exist. Without boundaries, love becomes something distorted, something selfish, something manipulative. Love without boundaries is not love at all. It is a breeding ground for exploitation, for resentment, for destruction. True love respects limits. True love honors distinctions. True love reflects the character of the God who says both yes and no, in perfect wisdom and perfect timing. When you set a boundary, you are not shutting people out. You are setting the conditions in which true relationship can flourish. You are saying, "This is where I end and where you begin. This is what I can give freely, and this is what I must guard carefully." Without those lines, everything bleeds together in a mess of unmet expectations, violated trust, and crushed spirits. But with those lines, clarity emerges. Responsibility is clear. Freedom is honored. Trust is built because when people know where they stand, they can choose to respect you, to honor you, to love you rightly. The divine order is not about control. It is not about harsh rules or rigid perfectionism. It is about wisdom, about knowing that every good thing in this life thrives within the boundaries God has set. Rivers need banks, or they become floods. Fire needs a hearth, or it becomes destruction. Love needs truth, or it becomes sentimentality. Freedom needs discipline, or it becomes chaos. Every boundary that mirrors the divine order is meant to foster life, not stifle it. Many people fear setting boundaries because they have been taught that love means endless availability, endless sacrifice, endless bending. But that is not the love God models. God loves with an everlasting love, but He also says no. He sets standards. He defines what is acceptable and what is not. He welcomes all who come in repentance and truth, but He does not compromise His holiness. He is patient, but He is not permissive. His love is strong, but it is not soft in the face of sin. If God's own love includes firm boundaries, why would we think ours should not? When we live without boundaries, we are living against the grain of creation itself. We are trying to swim upstream against the very order that God wove into existence. And it will exhaust us. It will drain the life out of us. It will leave us confused, bitter, and broken. But when we embrace godly boundaries, when we align our lives with the divine order, we find that everything begins to fall into place. There is clarity, there is strength, there is rest, there is joy. Boundaries teach us humility. They remind us that we are not infinite. We are not God. We have limits. We must rest. We must say no. We must discern. We must guard the good deposit entrusted to us. To live without boundaries is to live in rebellion against the nature God has given us. But to live with boundaries is to live in surrender, in alignment, in peace. There is a beauty in a life lived within the lines God has drawn. There is a freedom in knowing that you do not have to be everything to everyone. There is a deep, sustaining joy in knowing that you are called to be faithful within your limits, not responsible for carrying the entire world on your back. Boundaries do not diminish your life, they define it. They do not constrict your calling, they protect it. They do not isolate you from love, they make real love possible. When you set boundaries that mirror the divine order, you are bearing witness to the God of creation. You are declaring with your life that order is better than chaos, that clarity is better than confusion, that love is better than fear. You are saying, I trust the way God has made the world. I trust that His design is good. I trust that His limits are life, giving. And in doing so, you step into the fullness of the life you were created for, a life of strength, of wisdom, of beauty, and of peace. Would you also like me to continue with the final keynote? I'd keep the same emotional and rich tone, so it all flows seamlessly if you're preparing a full talk or manuscript. Purpose is not something you stumble upon by accident. Power is not something you wield because it feels good or because you simply want it. Purpose and power are given by God, entrusted to men and women who are willing to live according to His ways, according to His truth. And one of the greatest ways we either protect or destroy what God has entrusted to us is through the setting of boundaries. Without clear, godly boundaries, you do not simply lose a little time or a little energy. You lose your very purpose. You lose the sharpness of your call. You lose the strength of your voice. You lose the clarity of your direction, and in losing all these things, you lose the power to live the life you were meant to live. When you do not set boundaries, you allow the demands of others, the pressures of life, and the noise of the world to define you. Slowly, piece by piece, you are pulled in 1,000 different directions. You say yes to things you should never have touched. You involve yourself in battles you were never called to fight. You give away your time, your attention, your heart to things that drain you dry. And at first, you do not notice it. At first, you tell yourself you are just being loving, just being sacrificial, just being available. But over time, the edges of your life begin to blur. The things that once burned bright with conviction grow dim. The passions that once stirred your soul settle into a numb routine. The clarity you once had is traded for confusion, and you wake up one day and realize you no longer know who you are, or what you are doing, or why you started on this path in the first place. Without boundaries, your life becomes like a river without banks. It spreads thin and wide, seeping into every low place, but it loses its force. It loses its direction. It loses its power to carve valleys, to shape landscapes, to sustain life. A river without boundaries becomes a swamp, stagnant, directionless, breeding disease instead of life. And a life without boundaries becomes much the same, stagnant, confused, powerless, a breeding ground for resentment and bitterness instead of a wellspring of joy and strength. God has placed a calling on your life, a purpose that is uniquely yours, and with that calling comes responsibility. The responsibility to guard it, to steward it, to protect it from the 1,000 other things that will try to pull you away. If you do not set boundaries around your time, your energy, your relationships, and your heart, you will not be able to stay faithful to that calling. You will be distracted. You will be drained. You will be overwhelmed. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your life will be consumed by things that do not matter, while the things that matter most are left unattended. Setting boundaries is not selfishness. It is stewardship. It is the wise and faithful management of the life God has given you. It is the fierce, loving protection of your purpose. It is the refusal to allow the urgent to crowd out the important. It is the choice to say, I will not spend my life on things that God has not called me to. I will not let the noise of the world drown out the still, small voice of my Savior. I will not trade the eternal for the temporary. When you say yes to everything, you are saying no to something. You are saying no to focus. You are saying no to depth. You are saying no to excellence. You are saying no to obedience. Every yes must be weighed, must be tested, must be measured against the purpose God has placed in your heart. Because not every opportunity is a calling, not every need is your assignment, not every cry for help is yours to answer. And if you lose sight of that, you will spend your life exhausted, scattered, ineffective. Power in a human life comes from focus. It comes from the ability to pour yourself fully into the work God has given you. It comes from the strength to say, this one thing I do, not these 1,000 things I attempt. A laser is powerful because it is focused. It concentrates energy into a single sharp point, but a light that is diffused, scattered across a wide area, loses its ability to cut through anything. Your life is no different. Without boundaries, you are scattered light, visible, perhaps, but without impact. With boundaries, you are a focused beam, able to cut through the darkness, able to make a difference, able to fulfill your purpose with power and precision. Boundaries are what allow you to be present. Truly present, when you know what is yours to do and what is not, you can give yourself fully to the task at hand. You are not half-hearted, divided, distracted. You are wholehearted, committed, engaged. And there is a power in that kind of living that the world desperately needs to see. A power that comes not from frantic activity, but from quiet faithfulness. Not from saying yes to everything, but from saying yes to the right thing. There will always be more needs than you can meet. There will always be more opportunities than you can take. There will always be more demands on your time than you can satisfy. And if you do not set boundaries, if you do not guard your heart, you will drown. You will burn out. You will lose the ability to hear the voice of God calling you back to the center. You will become so busy doing good things that you forget the one thing that is needful. To sit at His feet, to listen to His voice, to obey His calling. The world will praise your busyness. It will applaud your exhaustion. It will admire your frantic pace, and all the while, your soul will be withering. Your purpose will be slipping through your fingers. Your power will be evaporating like mist in the morning sun. Do not be deceived. Do not trade the real for the counterfeit. Do not sacrifice your purpose on the altar of busyness. Set boundaries. Say no when you must. Guard your time, guard your heart, guard your calling. You are not called to be everything to everyone. You are not called to meet every need. You are not called to fix every problem. You are called to be faithful to the portion assigned to you. And you cannot be faithful without boundaries. You cannot be powerful without focus. You cannot fulfill your purpose without saying no to the things that would pull you away. Boundaries are not about building walls to keep people out. They are about building walls to protect what is precious within. They are about saying, this is the life God has given me, and I will not squander it. I will not sell it cheap. I will not let it be overrun by every passing whim, every urgent cry, every distraction that clamors for my attention. I will live with intention. I will live with focus. I will live with purpose. Without boundaries, you lose your way. You lose your strength. You lose your voice. You become a ghost of the person God called you to be. But with boundaries, you stand tall. You walk in purpose. You speak with clarity. You move with power. You reflect the image of the God who created the world with order, with purpose, with beauty. And you become, in your own small but faithful way, a bearer of that same order into a world that so desperately needs it. Would you like me now to help you organize all these keynotes into a full speech or manuscript? matching the same tone, like a real human preacher delivering it. It would be powerful.